In 1994, special effects computer animation veteran Jerry McKenna and Lauren Lanning has united together to create a video game company called Oddworld Inhabitants. They've bound together to not only create a new video game series, but a new video game universe called the Oddworld Quintology. It was a new level of designing games and make narrative adventure to go in depth in the Oddworld universe in the character's eyes. But before jumping into this fictional universe, Oddworld Inhabitants must need to make a video game that will catch people's interest by giving them something unique and original in order for this pentology to be at all successful and memorable. So they've begun in production in January 1995 using the best computer technology they can have for development, and it would take them 2 long years for releasing this game. Then in 1997, Oddworld Inhabitants released their first game, and it was Oddworld, Abe's Oddysee, released for the PC and PlayStation. The story opens up with our protagonist Abe, where he and many other of his kind, called the Madokans, who have been enslaved all their lives to Moloch the Glockin, who owns a corporation factory called Rupture Farms, which is known for the biggest meat process plant on Oddworld. One night when Abe was working overnight, while staring at the advertisements of Rupture Farms like Scrab Cakes, Paramite Pies, and Meat Munchies, where various Glockins were discussing their dilemma. Eavesdropping, Abe realizes that Rupture Farms products are running out, which is affecting their business. Their solution was to make a new product called Madokan Pops, where all the Madokans working in the factory will become their #1 product. Horrified by what he saw, Abe starts to escape from the factory, and thus a new adventure has begun. For those who hasn't seen my last video, Oddworld Abe's Oddysee is a cinematic platformer. This 2D platformer subgenre does not defy the laws of physics, but rather make gameplay realistic and feel lifelike movements from walking, jumping, and everything else that I already mentioned in my cinematic platformer video that has taken major influence from Prince of Persia and Out of This World. Like those games, Abe's Oddysee has interactive gameplay with a rich narrative adventure. As you can see, cinematic platformers are not your typical 2D platformers where you have to jump on people's heads, but rather you face a lot of challenge and the dangers ahead of you. You have normal abilities including creeping, crawling, running, rolling, jumping, and crouching, activating switches, and other interaction with your environment, all of which has a specific application and make necessary arsenal of moves. Unlike other games in this subgenre, you cannot defend yourself with attacks. In fact, Abe has no defense, so he's basically a prey. This is creative because you can have so many ways to get past your enemies and solve puzzles. You can carry bombs and other objects and throw them to wipe them away. And occasionally at times there are traps where you can activate them, which is another way to wipe your enemies away, or get a perfect spot to possess them. As you can see, Madokans have the power to chant. I think this feature of possessing your enemies, only the Slig, is very helpful because you can get past through the dangers ahead of you. Possessing Sligs is necessary in certain situations, usually to kill other Sligs in nearby screens or to give them commands by nearby slogs. When possessing a Slig, the player remains mobile and vulnerable to attacks. Upon abandoning control of possessing a Slig, the victim must burst into pieces. You might be asking, why are Madokans at the bottom of the class if they have such an ability to possess one another? But one thing that keeps them from using the ability to chant are these machines that will electrocute them whenever they start to chant. So keep in mind that you can't always have the ability to possess whenever you see these things, which creates even more challenge in the game. But don't think that these enemies are easy to get past through, because the game engine they run on has artificial intelligence that's in Abe's Oddysee called ALIVE. Aware Lifeform in Virtual Environment, and it has been claimed for being realistic encounters and intelligent enemies. As long as they see you, you are endangered unless you find a good hiding spot or find a way to get out of their sights. But the main focus on the game is the player's choice in saving Madokans, who are also endangered of becoming Rupture Farms products. Not all of the Madokans, just the ones who are slaves to Rupture Farm. You cannot possess these Madokans, but rather give them commands such as saying hello, follow me, wait, and etc., which they call game speak. And no matter what command you give them, they will follow and obey what game speak you pressed, just as long as you don't make them stand too long in one place. And your duty is to help guide them to their escape, which are these bird portals, where Abe has to chant them to create a portal, which will immediately make all the Madokans in the same screen to jump in the portal. Some of these bird portals are for helping Madokans to escape, and sometimes open a secret area for Abe. And this is the first time in a video game where a video game character has the ability to command a non-playable character, and made interactions in the video game make a major step into a whole new level. The only problem is that you can only command one Madokan at a time, which creates the frustration of going back and forth of rescuing a great number of Madokans. but like I said, it's the player's choice to rescue them or not, because since it's very interactive, you can find a way to kill them by possessing a sling to shoot them, or find a trap and use it to kill them. But this is pretty sadistic to see anyone to be killing any of these innocent creatures. But I love the consequences of killing or not rescuing a Madokin, because there are a certain number of escapees that you'll have to make, which I'm not going to spoil, that determines which of the two endings you'll have. The best ending is to save a certain number of Madokins, which I'm not going to tell, to see how challenging it is to do so, and it feels so rewarding to have so many pain in the ass moments you'll have in this game just to get the best outcome of the ending. Speaking of which, cinematic platformers are most notorious for having a great deal of trial and error, and Oddworld Abe's Oddysee is no exception. You will find parts in this game that is balls to the walls frustrating that will test your patience. Since this game is not a side-scrolling adventure, it has a game style where you end up to one screen to the next, and you'll never know what's on the next screen, whether or not you'll survive. Fortunately, you have infinite lives, and you can reach the checkpoints that are few and far between. What I find a flaw is that a number of Madokins that you save will feel wasted if you die and do not reach a certain checkpoint. Or sometimes when you reach a certain checkpoint, the game does not put the number of escapees you have made, which makes going back and forth a bigger pain in the ass. Or if you accidentally kill a Madokin, and if you want to kill yourself to redo the process, if you reach to a certain checkpoint, it's already too late to save that Madokin, and trying to complete everything will feel wasted. The biggest flaw in this game, I'm only talking about the PlayStation version, is the save feature. It's very important for a hard game with a long adventure to need save points. They have it here, but I find it a huge flaw to not be able to overwrite your save progress, which really feels like busy work to keep deleting that save file just to save your progress and save some room for your memory card. I especially find it a bigger flaw when the next time you load, you won't be at the point where you last saved, and sometimes the Madokins that you have saved is not in record unless you reach to a certain checkpoint in the game. But off of my bitching aside, what made Oddworld Abe's Oddysee at all an interesting game is the design and atmosphere. Without a doubt, the level designs is truly well crafted, and even better with the character design, and still stay interactive with the environment. It's amazing how Oddworld Inhabitants manages to create such a game. Anyone who says the level designs or graphics are at all bad automatically loses all credibility to judge video games, period. Because I don't find any design flaws in this game, as they were all made for us to enter the Oddworld the way Oddworld Inhabitants intended to be. There are so many moments in this game that are so dark, immersive, and mesmerizing to watch that it hasn't aged one bit. This is one of those classics that stand the test of times of being a great game to play to this day. Most of all, the story is really great. Yeah, sure it is that Save the Slaves, Moses style type of story, but how narrative Abe's adventure is and keeps it moving forward, you know that this is one of a kind adventure. One of my favorite things about the designs are indeed the shadow effects, which is absolutely astounding, even to do stealth and sneak past through enemies. One of my favorite levels in the game that always gives me a warm feeling every time is the mosaic lines. The detailed designs really reminds me of Donkey Kong Country, and it's done better in this game. There is a ton of clever puzzles, really tough challenge, interactive gameplay, and so much innovations for its time that really is a true classic. And without a doubt, this is genuinely a work of art. I mean, a game that is so well crafted, mesmerizing just to watch, that makes anyone who says gaming will never be a work of art look subjective. That's why Oddworld's Abe's Oddysee deserves a 5 fingers out of 5. Now on the next game, Oddworld Abe's Exoddus. What's surprising about this game is whenever a new cinematic platformer is made, it takes developers years to make it, and usually it takes more time to make another one. But Abe's Exoddus took exactly a year since Abe's Oddysee, and whenever I expect a video game sequel, I expect it to not only play more or less the same, but also fix every flaw and improve on everything that I found from the original game in order for it to be a true sequel. And that's where Abe's Exoddus has accomplished. It continues right after Abe's Oddysee, with a good ending, Abe standing in front of a cheering crowd of Madokins. Carried away, he then falls off the stage and loses consciousness as he hit the ground. In a vision, 3 Madokin spirits inform Abe that the Glocken are using Madokin slaves to exhume Madokin's bones at Necrum, the burial grounds of ancient Madokins. Abe and 5 other Madokins cross the deserts of Oddworld and succeed in infiltrating Necrum mines, where Abe is separated from his friends, and thus our hero's new adventure begins. Right from the beginning, you already know that this is going to be one great game. The tutorials are much more helpful than it was from Abe's Oddysee, as the beginning of the game tells you everything that you need to know. And there are more improvements made in this game that really is outstanding. Starting with the Madokins you need to rescue. The Madokins are much more interactive, as they are not all exactly the same. There are some that feels normal, that will do whatever you command, and there are other Madokins that do not feel the same as they normally do. like the depressed ones who are exhausted from work or experience a tragedy that really needs some care to move on, or if any worse, they become suicidal. The pissed off ones that are really upset that you hurt or humiliated them. The sick ones that drank too many brew or was electrocuted that need spiritual Madokan healing from another Madokan to cure them, and the hyper ones who are exposed to laughing gas and needs to be punched to wake them up. Each of them can be solved, but there's one that cannot be solved, which are the blind Madokans who need special care and cleared passageways to find the bird portal to escape due to the fact that these innocent creatures had their sight taken away and cannot see whatsoever. With the new addition of the Madokans, new commands must be needed in order for this to even work. Guess what? It did. You have new abilities such as apologize Madokans to make them feel better, punch them to wake them up or piss them off, command to stop when they're fighting each other. Most of all, you can command more than one Madokan. I don't know what the max is, but being able to command more than one Madokan to follow you and do whatever you say is a major improvement from Abe's Oddysee. And even better, they have a much better AI where they do more stuff like activate switches, sneak past enemies, and so much more. With the new commands, they took off the secondary commands from the first one that was just rhythm whistling and noises just to communicate with the Madokan, or be killed by one, or have a Madokan to help you, which was the only passageway. They still have the secondary commands when possessing an enemy to communicate with another. Speaking of which, you can possess more than just the Slig this time, but also the Scrabs and Paramites that are indeed a big improvement, and even new enemies like the Glockens that can command his workers without question. The designs in this game are really phenomenal as the last game. You can argue that it'll almost look the same as the last game, but Oddworld inhabitants really began to show more of the Oddworld universe in ways that they heavily interested me. It was such a breathtaking experience to watch how atmospheric the game is, and to top it all down is how cleverly puzzling some areas in the game actually is. It just made adventuring the Oddworld universe more intuitive than ever before. But keep in mind that there are more ways to die in this installment of the series, so don't expect this game to be easy. I know some of you guys were worried about this game being easier than the last because some of the big improvements that Exoddus has made, but I can argue that some of the parts in this game were balls to the walls frustrating that it really tested my patience. And that's the reason why they needed to add one more little thing to the game. With the difficulty being more difficult than the last game, Oddworld inhabitants heavily improved the save system. Basically, not only you can finally overwrite your save data, but even better, they took away those checkpoints that had plenty of flaws in the game and added the quick save feature, meaning that you can make your own checkpoints in the game. This feature itself is the biggest improvement of the game. Occasionally, however, if you messed up making your own checkpoint, which is the biggest problem with making your own save points, don't worry because the game has a restart button to redo the level and helps you to get better in saving Madokans and more. I can't express myself how much Oddworld Abe's Exoddus surpasses Abe's Oddysee, minus the fact that Oddysee is darker and Exoddus is a little more lighthearted. The features itself is what really makes Exoddus a true video game sequel, as it included everything that makes the game better and took out some of the unnecessary stuff that did not need to be in the series. Whenever I hear or think of the word improvement, I think of Abe's Exoddus because it is everything that a sequel needs to be. With that being said, when I claim that Oddworld's Abe's Oddysee is a work of art, Abe's Exoddus is a piece of art. Literally, if this game is so beautiful to watch and at the same time very enjoyable to play, then there's no other way I can describe this game. I never said this with any other video game, especially in my top 10 favorite games, because none of them could ever fit the artistic form that you can see in real art galleries. But this is one of those games that feels like art. It is such a blast to feel something special in a 2D platformer that is one of those games that you must try if you haven't already. But don't play this game without playing Abe's Oddysee first like a cheap bastard, because you need to see all of Oddworld in Abe's eyes and appreciate the improvements that this game has made compared to the original. This is clearly one of the greatest cinematic platformers, and that's the reason why Oddworld Abe's Exoddus deserves a masterful 6 fingers out of 5. This is probably the best example of a video game sequel fixing every problem from the original. Abe's Oddysee is no way, shape, or form at all bad. It's just that I appreciate Exoddus so much that I wonder why more people haven't talked about this game more. But at all costs, do whatever you can to get both Oddworld, Abe's Oddysee, and Exoddus, because they're two of the greatest games of all time. And I know that I missed out a lot in discussing about those two games, but why spoil the fun? And I'm sorry that reviewing the Oddworld Quintology is incomplete, but I'll do my very best to review Munch's Oddysee and Stranger's Wrath. So if you're heavily interested of me to complete this review on the Oddworld Quintology, give a thumbs up, post a comment, and please subscribe.